Hi, I'm Laura with Red Desert Violin, and today I'd like to talk about a common problem in the left hand for violinists and all string players actually, and I call it the snapping pinky. And if you have it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't have it, you probably don't need this video unless you're trying to help someone else. The snapping pinky is usually when we're lifting our pinky, it snaps back uncontrollably. And my theory on why that happens is I'm envisioning that there's a tendon that is tense and it builds up pressure on one side of a bony ridge, usually this knuckle here, and when we lift past a certain point, it snaps to the other side of the bony ridge, causing our pinky to go from one position into a drastically different position. And that's how I understand it, and it may not be anatomically accurate as far as what's going on, but that's how I visualize it. Okay, so it's a bad problem because it slows our playing down, it disrupts our accuracy. It's disturbing to have our finger jolted into a different position beyond our control. So we're going to go through a few easy ways that you can correct this, but the first thing I'd like you to do is to learn how to make it happen on purpose, because by learning how to make it happen on purpose, maybe we can learn how to not make it happen. So let's go to a tabletop and we'll do a few activities and then we'll continue with the violin demonstration. Okay, so here I am at my unfortunately messy desk, and you can pick any tabletop you want to, just pick any level surface and try to lift your pinky up in such a way that it causes that familiar snapping to happen. Usually it gets caught at a certain point, it gets caught and then it snaps past the catch point. And I used to have this problem fairly badly, but I've trained my hand out of it to the point where I can hardly make it happen anymore. But I've worked with enough students and I remember from my own experience that there's a few factors that really contribute to this problem. The first one is lifting too high. Most of us can lift our pinky a little bit without experiencing the snapping pinky problem, but most of us, if we go past a certain point, we get that snap. So that's the first point to remember, is don't lift your pinky so high. The second factor that contributes a lot to this is the bow-legged pinky, and that's basically this spread where the pinky goes away from the other fingers into like a bow-legged position. Can you see that? Not the best shot, but we don't want to play violin with our pinky bent bow-legged. We want him to come and slant in line with the rest of the fingers, not bowed out like that, but in line. And that takes some real training, and that goes back to this discussion of playing on the targets of your fingers where the strings need to hit the inner corners, the corners that are closest to the thumb. And the pinky and ring finger are the two biggest culprits for rolling out, so that the string hits them on the bad corners over here. So that's one of the things, is just to train your pinky and your ring finger to slant in uniform with the rest of the fingers. Okay, and the final factor of the big three, there's many factors, but the final of the big three is tension. If there's tension, it's going to increase the tautness of that tendon over the bony ridge, and the snap is going to be more pronounced and worse. So those are the three. Go ahead and explore on your own. Try to make the snap happen on purpose and make some observations. And you just might find your own solution outside of the solutions that I'm going to show you. Let's go back to the violin now. Okay, so the main things we learned from the tabletop, besides any discoveries you made on your own, which I'd love it if you'd share your own unique discoveries, that would be really helpful for all of us. The cardinal rule for violin is relax, and the cardinal sin is tension. So there's never an instance where tension is good, ever. In your jaw, in your neck, in your shoulders, in your hand, in your arms. It's just never going to help you on violin. It's always going to fight against you. So get rid of tension and learn to recognize tension. That's probably the bigger one. Of course, we're not going to be tense on purpose, but a lot of us are tense and we don't realize it. So when you're doing the little pinky exercises to get rid of the snapping pinky, make sure you're not squeezing your thumb. Make sure your fingers aren't pressing down or doing any weird tension in this area here. Okay, so number one, learn to relax. Number two, learn to not lift your pinky so high, and that'll avoid bringing your pinky past that catching point. So even if the pinky is going to snap, you can prevent it from snapping by not going past that snapping point. And that just takes training and technique to override the desire to go bam and to lift your pinky up way too high. It just takes a little bit of practice and self-control. Along those same lines of lifting your pinky too high, don't straighten your pinky out. Keep him in a good curve where the only knuckle that needs to move is this one and another one that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this video. So just activate it from the base knuckle, keeping the pinky perfectly curved. I also mentioned when we were at the tabletop to watch out for bow-legged pinky, or to keep your pinky slanted in uniform with the other fingers, and keep him on his good target, on the good corner, not on that far corner. And a way that you can look out for that is to draw a line on your knuckles and make sure that that line is slanted up slightly, because if it's slanted up slightly, it's gonna put your pinky in a favorable position for avoiding the bow-legged pinky. Okay, that's practically a topic for a whole different video, so I'll just mention it and leave it at that. Here's a big one. The wrist position. If your wrist is out, it's gonna compound that snapping pinky, because it increases the tension, like big time. So many of us were threatened when we were just learning to play violin. We were threatened with our lives if we did this. And so we went to the other extreme and we do this. That's even worse, in my opinion, is way worse than just capsizing your wrist inwards. Of course, we don't want that either. Ideally, we'd like the wrist straight, or maybe a little bit in. And when you're in this position, you will feel as if you're doing this, but you're not. Look in a mirror and you'll see, man, feels like my wrist is totally in, but it's not. And that really releases the tension and puts you in a more favorable geometry to avoid that snapping pinky and to activate these base knuckles here. Okay, so wrist in. The final point for avoiding this snapping pinky is a visualization or body mapping concept. If you know anything about body mapping, basically the way that we perceive or conceptualize how our body works in our mind's eye, our body actually tries to work that way. And I've discovered some things about how I envision my shoulders working that have caused me some real shoulder pain, shoulder impingement and things. And it's probably because playing with Barbies, I envisioned this line here in my shoulders, that my shoulder mechanism is all just right here, but it's not. It's this complicated machinery involving the scapula and everything else. But the way that I was perceiving my shoulders to work impacted the way my shoulders tried to work, and it gave me some injuries. So the way you perceive your hand to work is going to affect the way it actually works. So if you can look at a skeletal hand next time you're in the doctor's office, or pull it up online, and you will see that our fingers don't start here. So many of us think that's the beginning of the fingers because we can't see what's going on under here. The fingers actually begin right at a joint right down here in the middle of our palm. And that is the base knuckle. That's the beginning of your finger. And when you're lifting your pinky, if you can visualize that is the beginning of that motion, and you're just keeping your pinky in a nice hook, put your finger here. You can actually feel that bone moving along with the rest of your finger. Visualizing the base knuckle as starting down here, where it actually does begin, can help you to improve that motion and to take some of the emphasis off of these knuckles here. And taking the emphasis off these knuckles can actually improve that motion. One final thing is, when you are practicing these exercises, and by exercises I just mean practicing some finger lifts and working on getting a smooth motion that doesn't activate that snap, you can use your other hand to splint the pinky bones and just feel around in here. When my finger is here, I don't know why, but my hand doesn't even try to snap when I'm holding right here. And it helps you to get that smooth motion in your mind and in your hand, and then take your hand away. It's strange. I'm not sure why it works, but it can help, especially if you have a really stubborn snap. I've had some students whose snapping tendency is so severe that it's taken quite a long time to correct it. And this holding or splinting with their other hand has really tended to help them a lot. So good luck. Pay attention to the finite details. Explore how to make it happen on purpose on the tabletop, and I'm sure that you'll be able to get rid of the problem of snapping pinky. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.